A black woman behind the wheel, dressed casually, greets him with polite compliance. Within seconds, words turn to force. The officer swings. A sharp crack echoes. The woman crumbles. And then, everything changes. Before bystanders can even react, he drops to his knees. The image freezes. The cop kneels before his victim, his rage replaced by shock and remorse. Because the woman is no stranger to power. She is the new police chief. This is a story about prejudice colliding with power, about the price of assumptions, and about a moment of justice so raw and real that it will linger long after the cameras stop rolling. Before we dive into the story, tell us, what city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love hearing from our global family. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep this storytelling journey alive. Your support truly keeps us going. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Let's begin. Monique Thompson, 45 years old, a daughter of this city, forged in its struggles, polished by her own ambition. She moves among us in a simple hoodie and slacks, her presence unassuming. Yet behind the veil of casual attire lies a journey defined by grit and intellect. From scholarship-funded schooling to heading anti-gang task forces, she's earned every accolade with sweat and unyielding resolve. Her wealth is quietly amassed, invested in community projects and neighborhood revitalizations. But Monique never flaunts her success. She prefers to blend into the tapestry of everyday life, to see firsthand the heartbeat of her city. Her humility belies a razor-sharp mind and an unwavering moral compass. She believes in fairness above all, even when the system itself seems rigged against her. Inside the precinct, officers respect her for her calm decisiveness. Outside, community leaders trust her because she listens. Yet she carries the hidden burden of being one of the first black women to lead this department, and the weight of proof that she belongs. John Mitchell, 34, a 10-year veteran of the force, his uniform crisp, his posture unwavering. He grew up in these streets and wore the badge as proof he belonged. On duty, he's confident and exacting. Off duty, a marriage in crisis, self-doubt gnaws at him. He sees policing as a calling, but over the years, small suspicions hardened into instincts. The people he encountered in the field, a hurried glance here, an offhand comment there, taught him to trust his gut over innocent appearances. He isn't a caricature of hatred. He believes himself fair. Yet implicit biases swirl beneath his surface, fueled by the same cultural currents that shape us all. Studies show that even well-intentioned officers can harbor these unexamined beliefs, and act on them in split-second decisions. By understanding Monique and John, her steeled empathy against his unvoiced suspicion, you see how different worlds can collide in a heartbeat. It's a crisp Monday morning. Central Avenue glistens with dew as commuters file into cafes. Headlines on a news ticker warn of strained police, community relations, and calls for reform after recent high-profile shootings. The atmosphere is charged. Everyone feels it, even if their coffee keeps them in denial. Monique's silver sedan glides into the parking zone of her former precinct, now her briefing site. No lights, no escort, a test of how she fares when stripped of ceremony. She grabs a latte from the counter, exchanges warm greeting with the receptionist, and reviews her day's agenda: community town halls, protocol reviews, an evening gala to honor fallen officers. Across town, John Mitchell finishes up an unrelated call. His dispatcher tags him. Possible fraud suspect, mid-40s black woman, silver vehicle, blue jacket. A blurry photo flashes on his in-car screen, an approximate match. His jaw sets. He alerts dispatch. On my way. Two lives, guided by very different compasses, are converging. One sees a community leader, the other, a potential criminal. John's cruiser edges behind Monique's sedan. He flicks on the lights. Monique eases to the curb, hands on the wheel. He approaches briskly. No greeting, only command. License and registration. Her compliance is immediate and calm. He studies her IDs, quick glance, dismissive. He notes the suburban address, the unmarked plate. In his mind, suspicion blooms. Why leave the precinct so casually? Who is she meeting? His tone frays into thinly veiled contempt. Every word peppers her with doubt. You sure you work here? What's in the trunk? Got any weapons? He leans in, too close, invading her space to intimidate. She answers every question with measured politeness. I left my firearm at the station, officer. I have no weapons, only my car. But he hears lies, feels threat. He notes the luxury watch on her wrist, the corporate ID in her glove box, evidence, in his mind, of privilege without explanation. A small crowd forms. Pedestrians pause. Phones appear. A backup officer arrives at John's call but keeps his distance, uneasy. Monique senses the tension but stays motionless, aware that any sudden move could provoke further aggression. Beneath this surface exchange, microaggressions crackle like static. In every pause, every sideways glance, the unspoken message rings clear: you are not who you say you are. Suspicion solidifies into action. John's voice hardens. Hands on the hood. Monique's trained composure metamorphoses into a silent test of patience. She moves slowly, but he sees only defiance. He grips her arm, a light tug at first, then a harsher yank. The crowd murmurs. He presses a knee into her back, forcing her to her knees on scorching asphalt. She feels the heat through her slacks. Her heartbeat echoes in her ears, but she doesn't cry out. Onlookers gasp. Someone yells, "What's going on?" John snaps, "Stay back!" To Monique, every moment is déjà vu, another stop, another assumption. Yet here, the stakes are even higher. She knows protocol, excessive force, racial profiling, clear policy violations. Yet policy means nothing against an officer convinced he's in the right. The backup officer reaches for his radio, ready to intervene. John shoves him away. The confrontation spirals. A bystander attempts to record the scene. John snatches at the phone. The woman resists. In the scramble, John loses control. A sharp blow lands on Monique's cheek. It resonates like a bell, spelling the point of no return. The simmering tension snaps. John Mitchell's grip tightens on Monique Thompson's arm as if it were a lifeline to his fractured sense of control. The crowd's murmurs swell into shouts, some pleading, some profane. Asphalt impinges through her clothing, her cheek throbs, but Monique's mind remains steely. She knows every forced movement is a violation not just of her person, but of law and ethics. John slams her face first onto the pavement. The world blurs, distant horns, a woman's shriek, the whir of a drone camera overhead. He yanks her arms violently behind her back, snapping the cuffs closed. Each click of metal against metal feels like a death knell for his integrity. In this moment, the officer ceases to be protector and becomes predator. His every action defies the oaths he swore, the training he received, and the humanity he once claimed. A bystander lunges forward. "Stop! She's a citizen!" Another braces herself to intervene but freezes as John shoves a warning finger, his face contorted in fury. The backup officer, torn between duty and conscience, hesitates under the flicker of his colleague's authority. Monique's breaths come in shallow bursts. Her eyes lock on John's, searching for recognition, something human amid the storm. He doesn't see a chief or a partner. He sees only the silhouette his biased mind conjured. He's trapped in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Expecting threat, he manufactures one. Studies show that officers under high stress and ambiguous conditions default to worst-case assumptions, especially when implicit biases skew perception. John's knee presses into her spine. A sharp pain radiates, but Monique's voice is lower than a whisper, calm, almost serene. He leans in, expecting tears or anger. Instead he hears 3 words. "I disclaim this." She references the department's use of force policy, invoking the very rules he's broken. He recoils, more at the implication that he's been outmaneuvered than at the words themselves. His worldview fractures further. Around them, cameras record every nuance, the slick of sweat on his temple, the fresh gravel beneath her hands. The bystanders oscillate between cheering, weeping, and capturing every second on phone screens. This is the brutality of unchecked power, swift, messy, and all too human. But in her stillness lies her greatest strength, the refusal to play his game. A piercing siren crescendoed down the street. 2 patrol cars screech to a halt nearby. Officers leap out, weapons drawn, confusion on their faces. They rush in, unsure which side of the law they're enforcing. One officer yells, "What's going on here?" Another reaches for bodycam activation. Only when a uniformed lieutenant pushes through the crowd and sees Monique in cuffs, slumped over the curb, does clarity break through the chaos. He storms toward John, seething. "Mitchell! Get your hands off her, now!" John stiffens, caught between 2 authorities. His face flushes scarlet as shame and fear wars with inertia. Slowly, he lifts his knee and steps back. Monique doesn't move. The lieutenant crouches beside her, calling for medics. Paramedics rush in, assessing her injuries. In the heat of confrontation, a split-second action can define a career and a life. As the crowd holds its breath, the arrival of allies turns the tide. But the worst has already been done. John remains rooted, staring at Monique's motionless form. Colleagues gently herd him away. His gaze flicks to the bystanders' phones, their lenses unblinking. The torrent of shame sweeps over him. Monique is lifted onto a stretcher, her uniform jacket draped over her shoulders like a reclaiming cloak. The lieutenant hovers protectively as she's loaded into an ambulance. Yet she waves him off. She will finish this confrontation on her own terms. Here, at the edge of suffering, she finds her moment of revelation. As the ambulance doors begin to close, Monique raises her head and calls out in a calm, resonant voice that cuts through siren echoes and crowd din. "I am Monique Thompson, Police Chief, badge number 0451. And you have just assaulted me, your superior." Time itself seems to pause. The rattling ambulance frame hovers between movement and standstill. Officers freeze, neighbors gape, journalists scramble to update their live feeds. On the pavement stands John Mitchell, hands awkwardly cuffed behind his back. The hue of his face shifts from red to ashen. He processes her words, her rank, her station, her authority, like a foreign language. His posture sags. Then, beneath the shock, something else surfaces, raw humanity. He drops to his knees, mirroring the forced position he had once imposed. His voice catches in his throat. In that breathtaking instant, the harbinger of justice becomes its humble messenger. The man who wielded power now bows under its rightful weight. John's knees press into the hot asphalt, the same ground he'd forced her onto, a symbolic restitution. Cameras flash. The crowd erupts into murmurs. "He's kneeling! She's the chief! Oh my God!" The viral video is already uploading. This image will be seared into the city's consciousness. Monique watches from the stretcher, pain streaking her features but pride firming her spine. The ambulance doors close. As they do, a hush settles. Interstitial footage cuts to social media posts and news clips, all capturing the same pivotal scene: Officer Mitchell on his knees before Police Chief Monique Thompson. Eyewitness accounts what really happened. "I've never seen anything like it. He stopped hitting her and just fell down. Then she said she was the chief." A civil rights attorney explains how under departmental policy, assaulting the chief is an automatic ground for felony charges. A criminologist notes the rarity of such public reversals. How seldom does an officer's brutality turn into his own indictment. Clips of Monique earlier in the day flash on screen, casually entering her coffee shop, greeting children at a school zone, reviewing case files in her car. John's initial APB broadcast scrolls beneath. Possible fraud suspect. The crumbs of misinformation that led to discrimination. In the days that followed, the department launched an immediate internal affairs investigation. Officer Mitchell was placed on administrative leave and faced charges of excessive force, racial profiling, and assault on a superior officer. His defense crumbled under the weight of bodycam footage and eyewitness testimony. Footage shows Monique at a press conference, the bruises on her cheek barely visible under makeup and studio lights. Behind her, department banners proclaim accountability and community trust. Chief Thompson addressed the city with characteristic grace. She called for systemic reform, mandatory bias training, stricter use of force protocols, and community oversight. She emphasized that no one, regardless of rank or race, should ever be judged by appearances alone. A snippet from her speech resonates as, "Today's events remind us that power without accountability is dangerous, and justice without compassion is hollow. We must see each other clearly, beyond stereotypes, beyond skin, beyond uniform." We cut to community leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens, each reflecting on the incident. A pastor speaks of healing, a schoolteacher speaks of empathy, a youth organizer speaks of hope. Across the city, dialogues began anew. In churches, in town halls, in living rooms, people grappled with what they saw: an officer kneeling not in worship, but in remorse. A chief rising not in triumph, but in dignity. The scene shifts to training sessions, officers undergoing bias awareness workshops, simulated traffic stops with role reversal, heated discussions with community panels. The process is messy, slow, but underway. Change is never instantaneous. But a single moment, captured in stark contrast, can catalyze transformation. For every officer who watched the viral video, for every citizen who felt betrayed by authority, there's a chance to rebuild trust. The final images show Monique back in uniform, directing officers on a neighborhood patrol, not as commander from a high tower, but walking alongside residents. Her steps are steady, her gaze inclusive. Overhead, the sun dips below the skyline once more, casting long shadows as voices from the crowd, friends, colleagues, family, offer words of support. "Thank you for showing us what true leadership looks like. We believe in you. Today, we choose justice." A single act of violence nearly erased a career. But a moment of revelation restored hope, not just for one department, but for every community longing to be seen. When we stop judging by appearances, we begin to see each other's humanity. May we all learn to kneel when we are wrong, and to stand tall when we are right. The sun has set on the day of reckoning, but its repercussions stretch far beyond twilight. In the hours following that viral moment, every corner of the city, and indeed the nation, pulsed with renewed urgency to confront the wounds exposed by Officer Mitchell's actions. What began as a singular act of violence, a misguided punch born from unchecked bias, has evolved into a watershed for policing, community relations, and the timeless struggle against prejudice. Through the night, news vans lined up outside the precinct's headquarters. Live feeds streamed the flashing lights, and anchors recounted the sequence of events with stunned incredulity. Online, hashtags like #ChiefUnderFire and #JusticeForThompson trended within minutes. Citizen journalists and amateur videographers dissected every frame of the bodycam footage. Meanwhile, inside precinct walls, officers gathered in small huddles, some in tears, others in silent reflection. For many, the sight of one of their own kneeling before the chief redefined the boundaries of authority. Leading detectives reviewed policies with a newfound seriousness. Beat officers admitted, off camera, that they too had witnessed moments where bias crept into their judgments. By dawn, legal scholars and civil rights leaders had been swept into the conversation. Television panels featured commentators drawing parallels between Monique Thompson's experience and historic instances of institutional racism. One commentator noted, "This incident mirrors the transformation we hoped to see after landmark cases in the 1960s, when the nation was forced to reckon with its own image in the mirror." Legal clinics reported spikes in calls from individuals seeking to understand their rights during police encounters. If a police chief can be treated like a suspect, what hope do ordinary citizens have? Many asked. The story rippled across state lines, prompting cities far and wide to review their own use of force records. In dozens of departments, internal affairs units dusted off cold cases of alleged profiling. Within 2 days, Monique convened a series of community listening sessions at neighborhood centers. She sat in circle with teachers, pastors, business owners, and youth activists, each bearing personal wounds inflicted by biased policing. In these sessions, raw honesty found its stage. Residents recounted late-night stops, invasive searches, and the ever-present fear that a routine encounter could turn deadly. A retired schoolteacher, tears in her eyes, described how her son, barely 16, had been stopped repeatedly on his way home from band practice. A small business owner spoke of lost revenue after police blocked his storefront during raids based on faulty intelligence. Monique absorbed each testimony, her diligence evident. She took notes, said little, but her presence radiated solidarity. At the close of each gathering, she shared her own story of bias, how she once had to show 10 forms of ID just to enter a city hall event. By standing in that room, Chief Thompson dissolved the barrier between power and people. She taught that healing begins when leaders are present and honest. Within days, the department rolled out voluntary Ride Along for Understanding programs. Civilians could join patrols, while officers spent shifts working in neighborhoods outside their usual beats. Facilitated debriefs allowed participants, police and public, to share perspectives, unearth misconceptions, and build empathy. Meanwhile, John Mitchell faced formal charges. The city prosecutor announced counts of assault, abuse of authority, and violation of civil rights, all felonies carrying potential prison time. His defense counsel released a statement promising a full accounting, while Mitchell himself remained silent, isolated in pre-trial detention. In the days leading up to the preliminary hearing, a psychologist appointed by the court evaluated him. The report noted significant implicit bias compounded by stress-related aggression, recommending counseling and sensitivity training, though the primary remedy would be the legal consequences he now faced. Beyond headlines, individual narratives flourished. A young black college student wrote an op-ed. If Monique Thompson's experience shows us anything, it's that respect is conditional in the eyes of some officers. We need guarantees, not prayers. A veteran officer of 20 years penned an open letter praising Monique's leadership, while admitting his own blind spots. He described how he had resisted mandatory training, until he saw that viral video. Monique, now a year into her tenure, stood before the city council to present her annual report. She highlighted the reforms, the challenges, and the work yet undone. We have come far, but far remains to go. True justice demands vigilance. In her closing remarks, she unveiled a new community fellowship program, pairing high school students with mentors in law enforcement, civic leadership, and social work. A year has passed since that fateful afternoon on Central Avenue. What began as a single act of cruelty, an officer's punch fueled by bias, has transformed into a legacy of accountability, healing, and hope. Under Chief Monique Thompson's leadership, the department stands renewed. The reforms she championed, mandatory bias training, clearer use of force protocols, transparent body cam policies, and a strengthened civilian oversight board, are no longer abstract ideals but daily practice. Officers now begin their shifts reflecting on the humanity behind every badge. Neighborhoods once fractured by fear now see patrols that listen as much as they protect. Citywide statistics tell the story of progress. Stops of black drivers down by more than a quarter, complaints of excessive force plummeting, and community trust climbing into majority territory. But numbers alone don't capture the transformed lives. A teenage boy, once too scared to ask for directions, now waves confidently at the patrol car beside him. A shop owner whose store was once raided in error now partners with officers on a community safety committee. The invisible walls of suspicion have begun to crumble. Chief Thompson herself remains a daily reminder that appearances deceive. In her crisp uniform, she walks the beat alongside her officers. In plain clothes, she sits at kitchen tables in underserved neighborhoods, listening to hopes, fears, and the unspoken pain of those too often overlooked. Her humility is her strength, her empathy the engine of change. Officer John Mitchell's story has become a cautionary tale. Stripped of his badge, he faced the full weight of the law, felony charges, a suspended sentence, and mandated rehabilitation. In a public letter, he admitted his wrongdoing and pledged to become an advocate for change, even from outside the force. His journey underscores a simple truth: acknowledging one's mistakes is the first step toward redemption. As dusk settles on the city skyline, We find Chief Thompson pausing on the steps of precinct headquarters, looking out over streets that are both familiar and transformed. The echoes of that viral video linger, not as a spectacle of shame, but as a catalyst for something greater. Bias can blind us, assumptions can hurt us, but courage can heal us. When one woman refused to be defined by cruelty, she redefined justice for an entire city. May we all learn to look beyond appearances, to kneel when we're wrong, to stand tall for what is right. If this story moved you, join us in amplifying voices that matter. Subscribe now to We Are Black on YouTube, your home for powerful narratives, inspiring change, and stories that reshape how we see one another. Hit the bell icon, stay connected, and help build a world where everyone is truly seen.